Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. They're nothing but a ghost. Alright, so I had an experience with a young lady that I was in a relationship with. We were actually both young. We were both in our 20s. And she had used to do something which I'm sure you guys have heard of called ghosting. It was kind of odd because the first couple of times it happened, I didn't really notice it. I did, but it was like, man, I don't know how to explain it. So essentially what happened was one day she was just gone, and I mean gone. So I went to her sister, and her sister didn't seem too concerned. I think it'd probably been about 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. And because back then we had pagers. This was just before cell phones. And of course she didn't return her pages, never called back. And so I didn't know what to do, and her family didn't seem too worried about it. So I was like, well, okay. And I think that's what it was, why I didn't really get worried or like, hey, what's going on, is because her family seemed totally okay with it. And I think also because early on she had kind of done what I would call mini ghosts, where you wouldn't hear from her for 3 days or 5 days or even a week, and then she'd just show up. So it kind of got conditioned into me. So in other words, it was kind of like, well, this is just part of her personality. She just kind of disappears once in a while, and that was it. And I think I did bring it up to a couple people, like my pastor, and I think probably my mom, I forget whoever else. And then she would show up 2 days later, and everyone, oh, no big deal. And it's, because to them it was only 2 days, whereas for me it was probably like a week or 8 days or something. And her family seemed to be okay with it, and it was just like, everyone was okay with it. Like, nobody seemed to be alarmed by it. Now, we were together for about 8 years approximately, maybe a little bit more, but then it was an off and on kind of thing. So one time she would disappear. She disappeared for 3 months, and it was just like, I went to her work, and the thing is, nobody seemed to be worried. And a couple of her workers were pretty close to her, and they seemed fine with it. So nobody seemed to be alarmed at this point. So this time she disappeared for about 3.5 months. And one day she just called me, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing fine. Where are you? What's going on? Oh, I moved to Concord. I'm like, what? Because she lived at home with her sister and her family. And so I was just flabbergasted. She acted like it was, I'm like, well, how can you live there? She goes, oh, well, I'm renting a room out of an apartment with my friends. I'm like, what friends? Because I knew her true best friends, and they weren't living there. And I'm just like, what are you? She goes, oh, no, my other friends. I'm like, what other friends? What are you talking about? So she had this completely separate social life. So I'm like, well, do I know these people? Like, did we meet them at a club somewhere or at a party? And she's like, no. And I'm like, well, who are they? She goes, oh, don't worry about that. And now I'm just like, oh, okay. So I said, well, give me the address and I'll come by and meet these people. She's like, no, I'm moving back home. And I was like, okay, whatever. So then she did it another time, and she was gone for about 3 months again. And she randomly called me up out of the blue, and she would always act like she just talked to me yesterday, like she'd only been gone for like 18 hours or 12 hours or something. And she even, I think when I confronted her, she's like, well, what's the big deal? Like, I don't understand. And I'm like, huh, okay. So she actually invited me over to meet these people, and it was a completely different crowd of people. I'm like, well, who are these people? Now, I don't mean just different people, but I mean a different persona, personality, energy level. Like, these were just like nothing like the people she knew where we lived. Like, not even, just different. It was a strange world. She invited me over, and they were playing a movie. Oh, we bought pizza and stuff. And here's the funny thing, like, she came home with me that day. It wasn't like she was staying longer. She just packed up and left, and never heard or saw those people again. Now here's the deal. These are completely separate people, and this like different cities, and I'm going to guess they're about, I'm going to guess 40 miles away, about an hour drive from each other. It's just completely different directions too. Now the funny thing is, she would just leave in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock in the morning when everybody was asleep, and she would just poof disappear. You know, the funny thing is like, no one got in a fight with her. Nobody was upset with her. She wasn't upset at anybody. It wasn't like something happened. She would just leave. Now, this was when I was really going deep into meditation on a daily basis. And I mean deep. We're talking minimum 2 hours a day, if not more. And she disappeared again. And this time it wasn't so far away. I would say it was about 20-minute drive, maybe 25-minute drive, something like that. And I did my meditation thing, and I know it's going to sound funny, I've said it in the past, but I located her. It was at nighttime, it was probably 1 in the morning. And I got there probably about 2, because I started meditating. Eventually something said, get up, get in your car, turn this way, get on the freeway, go this way. And, you know, I went down the freeway for a while, and that thing, whatever it was, kind of disappeared. And then I was about to turn around, because I'd been on the freeway for about 10 minutes or more. And I was about to take the next exit and turn around. And it said, take this exit. I was like, okay, cool, you're back. So I took the exit. It says, take a left, go over, go through this stoplight, go through this one, take a right, boom, stop. And she was right there in that house. It was a house that was turned into, like, I think like a 4-bedroom apartment, something like that. So she called me up the very next morning. She's like, you're not going to believe this. She goes, I woke up at about 1 or 2 in the morning. I had the weirdest feeling like you were standing right outside. So I had told her where I went. It was actually UC Davis, and where, you know, what exit I took, etc. I go, and I stopped. I go, I had this feeling you were in this house, and I described it. And she goes, that's the house I live in. I was like, no way. She goes, no, I'm telling you. So she gave me the directions, and sure enough, her car was parked around this white van. It had a little car, and the van was, if I would have got out of my car and walked behind it, I would have seen her car. Now this was one of the shorter, I call it ghostings that she did. I think it was only 2 months. So for some reason she came home immediately the very next day. Well, then there was another time, again, it would be about maybe a year later. I forget how long, but it would be a while later. She would just do this like every month. And then about a year later, she left for 6 months. Now, this time her sister had called me. The funny thing was her sister called me about 2 weeks after she'd been missing. Whereas before, she could be missing for months, and she either wouldn't call or she would finally call. But this time she was really urgent. She was scared. She's like, and she's begging me, you know, Mike, please, if you've seen her. I'm like, I haven't seen her. I go, she literally just disappeared again. And she goes, I forget what she said, but I said, look, you can come and stay at my place. You can sleep on the couch. I'll give you a key to my place. You can come and go day or night, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I don't care. I go, I'm telling you, I have no idea where she's at. So she was so scared. I said, you need to call the police and make a report. Which she didn't. She didn't want to do that. I don't know why. Maybe she was afraid. I don't know what the deal was. So I about an hour later, because she got me kind of hyped up, I got worried. So then what I did was I called the police. And the police had flat out told me, they're like, there's nothing, you know, if you're not married to her, you're not her blood, family, relative, mother, father, brother, sister, there's nothing you can do. You can't make a missing police report. So I went by her work the next day, and I just showed up and I started asking people, like, hey, you know, where is she? And they're like, oh, we don't know. So I'm like, well, like, I don't understand. Like, did she give her 2 weeks notice? They're like, no. They said she just stopped showing up one day. So I was pretty much at a loss. I didn't know what to do, and I just let it go. And then about 2 or 3 more months later, so it's about the 5th month or so, my sister randomly showed up at my door, which is kind of odd because she just never did. She just, hey, what's going on? I haven't seen you in a while, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, and she said my girlfriend's name, how's so-and-so? And I go, I don't really know. And she goes, well, what do you mean? Did you guys break up? I'm like, no. So then she said, well, like, what's going on? I go, well, I haven't seen her in, so many months. I think I said 5 months or 6 months or almost half a year. And she kind of looked at me. She goes, don't you think that's kind of weird? I'm like, yeah. I go, I don't know what to do. I mean, I called the police. They said I can't make a report that our family has to do, and our family won't do it. I mean, I don't know what to do. The funny thing is, again, she showed up about 2 or 3 weeks later, just kind of out of the blue. And she even took me to the place where she lived. She had rented a room in a home, knew this person. And I'm like, well, how do you know this person? And again, she had a job. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if I told you this, but she planned this stuff in advance. She would have a job. She would have a place to live. Everything was set. And then, boom, she would just leave and wouldn't tell anybody. And again, it was a completely different place, different city, different person that wasn't connected to the other two groups. I mean, it was just this random, gone, ghosting. So I didn't know what to think about it. I had said she needed therapy. I said, this is just not normal. And of course, no. She didn't want nothing to do with that. And so I loved her, and I didn't know what to do about it. Now, from what I understand, they do this to make... Now, I actually just watched the video right now, and I'd never heard this before, and I personally never experienced this. So apparently, it's supposed to make you feel like you're invisible, like you're a ghost. Now, I didn't experience it. I just went on with my life and thought it was weird. And because I was busy, I was going to college, I had a job, I was in kickboxing, I was studying NLP, I was just busy around the clock, but for whatever reason, it didn't make me feel anything. I missed her, I was worried about her, but no one around her seemed to be too worried, including her family. And the thing is, though, but she kind of did this consistently enough to where it was like, well, this is just who she is. And I think that's why a lot of people didn't worry. Now, I think one of the things they're trying to do is I think there's two factors. I think they're trying to make you miss them and want them and bring them back, Now, she turned out to be a narcissist, for sure. When I learned about narcissists, people was like, oh, she did all of this stuff. Now, this ghosting is just one factor of what a narcissist will do, by the way. The other thing of what I heard is it's kind of like, I'm not going to say this correctly, I'm going to stumble through it, is that it's like they're kind of stressed wearing this mask. So, and they might realize like, oh, people are catching on to them. And then they're like, hey, I've got to get away. I've got to do a refresh. I've got to rest up. I've got to kind of like almost rest, get away from all the stress, get away from people that know them. Because they have to play this role with everyone. And they have to remember every lie that they told everyone. And it becomes exhausting, okay? And so I do remember, as I'm saying this right now, I reflect back to how many times I'd be like, wait a minute, but you said blah, blah, blah just the other day. She'd, oh, did I? And she would laugh and giggle and like try to like play it off. But she would do it with me and with other people. And now in retrospect, I was like, oh, it's because she was getting caught in lies. She'd say one thing, and then a couple of days later, a week later, she'd say something completely opposite. And people are like, wait a minute, but you said blah, blah, blah. And she, oh, he did I? Oh, he, well, and she'd have some bullshit, excuse, or she'd say, oh, I didn't mean that, or I don't remember. And as I'm looking back right now, as I'm making like, oh, God, she was just covering up lie after lie after lie. And you can imagine how exhausting that would have to be. So moving away like that, I think number one, the ghosting, it's trying to make you feel hurt, and then it's trying to make you want them back. And that's kind of like always part of the strategy is to get you to want them, okay? So they disappear from their coworkers, their friends, their family, their boyfriend or girlfriend, etc. because like, oh yeah, they're going to want me back, which I think there's a lot of truth to that. It can cause that. And I think the other part is it's like a refresh. Like I've been gone for so long. We're going to start over and kind of just forget about all the lies I got caught in, and let's just start over. Now, I don't know if I said this already. I don't think I did. But literally after 6 months, she just showed up out of the clear blue sky, knocks on my door, and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, and I was stunned. My mouth just dropped. And she goes, "Hey, do you want to go out?" I remember she goes, "Do you want to go out to lunch? It's on me." And I was looking at her like, and I was stunned. My mouth literally was wide open. And I'm just staring at her because I didn't know I was kind of frozen. So I finally, kind of in an almost angry way, not too angry, but kind of like, I go, "Where have you been?" And she goes, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, and now that stunned me too. And I just, and I'm thinking, what? I'm like, "You've been gone for 6 months. Like, where have you been? You just show up at my door and you want to go to lunch?" She goes, "Well, yeah, do you want to go?" Completely trying to push away. Like literally, she acted like, and at one point she was, "Well, like, what are you talking about?" Like she had just been here yesterday, and that's what she did every time. It was like no time had passed. Like what? And I think she literally said, "What are you talking about? Like I don't understand." And I'm like, "You've been gone," and she would completely ignore anything I would say about the 6 months and just would not acknowledge that. She would just change the subject, say, "Well, do you want to go to lunch or how you been?" And I'm like, no, we're going to talk about this. She goes, "Talk about what?" Okay, I got to be honest with you. Halfway through this video, maybe at least the last 5 minutes, I've been kind of giggling. Because this was a long time ago, number one. Obviously, I've healed from it. Number two, it's kind of a comedic, diabolical, kind of like, it was so, like, it's so bizarre, it's funny. Because she had this childlike way about her, like literally like she was a little girl, and her smile was just so big, and you kind of look, now I admit now, if someone did that to me, I'd never talk to them again. Like, "Nope, we're not doing this." Like, there's no way I'd go through that again. Now, the one thing, there was another time that she left, and it wasn't too long after this, and I meditated again, and it was only for about, I'm going to guess, 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. It was a very short period of time, at least in comparison to the other ones. So I did the meditation thing again, and it's kind of funny. It's like one of those Apple, what are those things called, locators or whatever, devices where you can track stuff. Apple Tracker, I'm going to call it. But that's what it's like. I meditated, and it didn't take too long. It took about 20 or 30 minutes of doing this deep breathing technique and going in within, and boom, I knew exactly where, well, I would say I knew where she was at the time. It says, "Get in the car, go up the road." But this time it's like, take a left on the freeway and head west. And luckily this time she was only about, I think from where I was at, probably 15 minutes. And she was staying at a rest stop just before Vallejo. Now, she had a home, she had her own room, had her own place, etc., had a great job and was making good money, but she was living out of her car. And I remember, like, even pulling into the rest stop, I hadn't been there in years, and I was like, man, I don't remember, because it was packed. I'm like, I don't ever remember every spot being packed like this, but it's like I knew, like, go right, one more, now turn left, and boom, there her car was. And she had the towels like rolled up in her windows and covering her front window, so you couldn't see in. But I knocked and knocked. I said, "It's okay, it's me." And I said my name. I spoke my voice loud, and she goes, "How did you find me?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just always do." And so she was sad this time. I think this time was a little different. For some reason, she was sad, and she hugged me and she cried. And I said, "Come home with me and stay with me." And she did. She was very solemn and quiet and sad. And this was kind of different. I don't think I saw this side to her before, but she was something was wrong. She was very sad. I think maybe her family made her feel ashamed, because there's big pressure on her being married by her family. And she was already 23, 24, and they expected her to be married at 18, 19, 20 at the latest. Because in her culture, that's the way it was. But regardless, something was really putting a lot of pressure on her. She was really sad. I think there was a lot of shame, and she felt really bad. Meaning really, really sad. So she did stay with me for a while. I don't remember if it was a week or 5 days or a little bit longer, but for the first time, she just stayed at my place and, just stayed with me. And it was different because this time she was sad. She was solemn. And as usual, wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't. And I'm like, was your sister mean to you? Is something going on at home? Like, she just wouldn't open up. And that was very typical of her. She just wouldn't share. So I was a pretty intuitive person at the time, and I really realized like she just needed some space. She needed to be in a safe place and someone to just be there. You know, as I'm making this video, I'm realizing how much I loved her. I was like, no matter how much she did, it didn't matter. When she was hurting, I was there for her. So I just knew that she just needed someone to be there. She just needed unconditional love. The sad part about it was not, how do I say this? I don't mean in that moment, but even months later. Number one, there was never any reciprocation. There was never anything. There was never any explanation. There was never, to this day, I have no idea. Like, why did you disappear? Why were you sleeping in your car? You could have stayed with me. You could have stayed with your, in your own room. It was just like, to this day, I have no idea what that was about. But I will tell you this, I feel really good about the fact that I found her just by intuition. And just that I was just there for her. The sad part about it was, I don't know if it was weeks later, months later, she just became this vicious being and hurt me and selfish. And I mean, I'm not trying to be mean towards her. I'm actually feeling very compassionate towards her right now. It's just like, I find it odd that where you could just be there for someone through thick and thin with no answers, no understanding, no communication. They just ghost you and you're just compassionate and loving towards them. And then they turn around and they attack you viciously. So one thing I'm trying to avoid here is I don't want you guys to just constantly feel sorry for narcissists and be there for them, because they will damage you. It's like almost like right now, maybe I've completely healed. Like I look at her in this very, I don't know what the word is, loving, compassionate way right now. Clearly she was going through something, not just then, but for years. So I did the best I could to be there for her. And I think number two, I don't want you guys to think, oh, so we should like be forgiving. Yeah, I guess after you heal from it. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying like you should go through this. This is something that they have to heal, they have to fix, they have to deal. And the one thing is, she wouldn't go to therapy. She just wouldn't do it. And so the problem is, if you stick around, you're going to get caught up in their hurricane and you're going to get damaged. In fact, that's kind of their whole thing, is damaging other people so they can feel better about themselves. Because at least at that moment, that's the only way they know how to feel good at all. So sticking around thinking you can help them, now, even if you're a therapist or a healer, if you're in a relationship or a friendship with someone, they need to seek help from someone else, because your energy is intertwined. It's entangled. That is not a healthy thing to do therapy with people that you're in a relationship with. Especially if it's at this level where people are just ghosting for 6 months, 3 months at a time. Like, well, what's going on? There was a lot more than that. There's a lot of stuff. So you can teach them deep breathing techniques, you can teach them how to meditate, you can teach them healing techniques, but if it is this really chaotic hurricanal, storm, they need to seek professional help outside of you. So number one, if someone is doing this kind of stuff, they need to seek help, period, end of sentence. That's not even a question. This is just not a normal thing. Even her coworkers, like, here, I don't know if I finished that. I remember when I showed up, they're like, no, she just stopped showing up. And I went to the manager. I'm like, is this true? Like, yeah, she just hasn't showed up since, such and such day. Here's the really weird thing. Every time she did this, she would literally clock back in like nothing. And they would just be like, oh, I guess so-and-so's back. And her boss didn't even care. He would just start paying her again. Which I kind of giggle too, but in a positive way. It's kind of funny, but it's like, okay. So after being gone for months and months and months, she would just literally walk in, like literally wouldn't call, wouldn't announce, just walk in, clock in, like she was at work yesterday. So it's kind of diabolically funny. And I think what it was is they needed workers. So they were like, well, we need help, so whatever. I don't know why, but I kind of look at all of this, at least now, as kind of cute, because she did have this really cute way about her when it came to a lot of things, but the other stuff, not worth it. Alright guys, that's it. I hope this video in some way helped you to understand your situation or past situations. If you do deal with someone that just disappears like that, you really should look for an exit, and they have to seek therapy from someone who's really good. Meaning someone who will hold them accountable and not let them slide. Alright guys, God bless you. I hope this video helped you. If you have any questions or if you want to share your stories, please feel free to write it in the comment. I would appreciate it. It'd be kind of nice to hear. If you like this video, please click subscribe, click the like button, go ahead and make a comment. And if you're so inclined, you can go ahead and make a donation. There's a PayPal link right there in the description box. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.